Good evening. I'm David Person, and it is my honor to be your host this year for this very special program, the Interfaith Mission Services Annual Celebration and Awards Conference. Last year's event was great. We recalled our founding in 1969 and marked our 50th year with the theme, Celebrating the Past, Imagining the Future. Of course, we didn't anticipate that the future was going to include a year like 2020 with all of the changes, dramatic changes that have affected all of our lives, which is why, of course, I'm speaking to you in essentially an empty auditorium. Well, nonetheless, we press on, and the theme for 2020 is The Future is Now. And tonight we will feature a distinguished panel that will join us to discuss future trends in American religion. But before we begin, let's go back again to this sort of unusual format that we've got here tonight. As you can see, we're on Zoom. And what you will notice is that except for participants, everybody else is going to be muted so that we can eliminate noise and other distractions. So we hope that you can bear with us as we go through this interesting technical journey here. But don't fear, because while some of you may be muted, we know and you know that your input and your support for IMS are still valued and they are heard. We appreciate your commitment to IMS and to our efforts to have an impact positively in the areas of community service and social justice, interfaith cooperation, and racial equity. We may be socially distant at this time, but we are no less united in our purpose and resolve to make a positive difference in North Alabama. This year, we're not eating together as we customarily do. In fact, I've enjoyed a few good meals here, as you can probably tell. But this year, we're not eating together. However, we trust that the conversation, the dialogue, the presentations, the acknowledgments, this whole program will be food for your spirit, your mind, your heart, your soul. We should also acknowledge that we could not do a program like this without the support of great organizations like the Trinity United Methodist Church. And we are actually streaming to you live right now from the new room, what is called the new room here at Trinity United Methodist Church. And we appreciate the leadership here and the members here for providing us with this space, even though, again, as I said, it's mostly empty except for a few participants and the technical crew. And speaking of the technical crew, we want to also commend Bluewood Productions for their technical expertise in helping us to pull this off tonight. You know, all of this Zooming and streaming that we do, sometimes we take for granted that in order to do programs of this magnitude, it really does take expertise beyond just sitting at your laptop. And so we thank Bluewood Productions for their work tonight. All right, and now I have the honor of introducing, to help move us along with our program, IMS's treasurer, my friend and colleague, Doug C. Doug?
Thank you so much, David. That was indeed another eloquent job by David Person, such a great MC. I want to thank everybody here for coming and participating as you are, and especially all of those who are here virtually. We appreciate the many, many people who have signed up in the registration forum online and have contributed to IMS. In this period of the pandemic, we realize what a strain that is on certain families and and we feel for you. It's such a large group, and by your support of IMS, you bring forth the capability for IMS to continue in its mission to promote the interracial, interreligious, and intercultural harmony here in our community, and hopefully spread that far and wide. And speaking of far and wide, I know from my own family that some of the people in our audience today are not here in Huntsville. They're nowhere near, but still in the state of Alabama. And some, perhaps many, are in states that are not even adjacent to Alabama. And we welcome you all. It's a great opportunity. IMS is all about the people. I should notify everyone here that this session is being recorded, so we're compliant with that. But that makes a good reference point for the future. We can go back and review ourselves and our performance. So with that, thank you all. Welcome, welcome, welcome. David?
Thanks, Doug. And it is now my privilege to introduce the Reverend David Freeman, who is the senior pastor at Weatherly Heights Baptist Church and vice chair of the IMS Leadership Council, to deliver us our invocation. David is actually joining us via, I guess, Zoom. Yeah, he's joining us via Zoom from an undisclosed location somewhere. David, good to see you. And by all means, lead us in our invocation, please.
Thank you, David. I'm honored to do so, and join Doug in welcoming all who are joining us this evening. My friends in the faith community, let us pray. God of all the human race, all the peoples who've come before us, all who populate the earth today, and all who will come after us, our God, known by many names, perceived in many ways, we take pleasure in linking arms with a diverse, multiracial, interfaith community, believing that this is a reflection of your character. We ask that you hear our prayers this evening for the Interfaith Mission Service and our work to build the beloved community. May it come to pass that love will win over hatred, that respect will be victorious over suspicion, that the light of our faiths, our highest ideals, will dispel the darkness of the world around us. May we not be satisfied until peace and justice kiss. Bless our work and bless our gathering this evening. Amen.
Amen. Amen. David, I think you could very easily teach a class on how to do a non-sectarian ecumenical prayer. That was awesome. Thank you. Thank you. All right. At last year's dinner, which was our 50th anniversary dinner, we showed a video that we believe is a great visual representation of the model that we wanted to present then and now, celebrating the past, imagining the future. So we're now going to play that video once again. Interfaith Mission Service, celebrating the past, imagining the future.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
The decade of the 1960s was tumultuous. We went from the high of meeting President Kennedy's challenge that we get to the moon to the low of Governor Wallace's promise of segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever.
I draw the line in the dust and toss the gauntlet before the feet of tyranny, and I say segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever.
Two different ways of looking at the future, of looking at our neighbors. Which path should Alabama, or more specifically Huntsville, follow? In 1969, following this decade of turmoil, 12 congregations formed a grassroots cooperative and named it the Interfaith Mission Service, an ecumenical interfaith organization whose goal was to work hand in hand to care for the vulnerable in the community and to promote racial equity and social justice. Covenant Presbyterian, Etz Chaim Conservative Synagogue, First Christian, First United Methodist, Home Street United Methodist, Lakewood United Methodist, Latham Memorial United Methodist, St. Mark's Lutheran, St. Paul's United Methodist, Temple B'nai Shalom, Trinity Presbyterian, and Trinity United Methodist. Within 3 years, the membership had doubled. Their goal was to bring faiths together, to tackle racism in all its forms, promote interfaith cooperation, work to alleviate poverty and its effects, and to hold injustice to the light and correct it. IMS, or the Power of We Network as it also came to be called, served as an incubator for a number of well-known and respected agencies. IMS member congregations established the need, created a solution, nurtured the agency until it was strong enough to stand alone, then spun it off to become its own 501c3. Among the agencies in Huntsville that began as IMS ministries are Helpline and Hope Place, now a part of Crisis Services of North Alabama, CASA, First Stop Homeless Day Shelter, and Lift Housing. There's certainly cause for celebration when we remember the first 50 years. What do we see as the future of bringing faiths together? What will the member congregations face? Congregations of all faith traditions face similar challenges. First, how do we face growing religious diversity? What accommodations need to be made when many faiths attend the same public schools, work together, live in community? Next challenge. What about the rise of fundamentalism in all of the world's great faiths? Challenge number 3. How do today's congregations interface with people who say they are spiritual but not interested in organized religion? The fourth challenge centers on how all of today's faiths resolve internal struggles over human sexuality and over interfaith cooperation. Number 5. How do congregations handle ethical questions raised by biotech research and space exploration? For starters, what does it mean to be human? When does life begin and end? In the future, congregations of all faiths will be facing these challenges. Please join us as we return to those 1969 grassroots and work together to build a beloved community. So that was 1 year ago that we first presented that video. And I think because of everything that we've gone through this year, it was good to revisit that video and some of the principles and issues that it raises and highlights. It's been my privilege to be an IMS supporter actively for several decades now. I know I don't look that old, but it's been several decades. And I am proud to be associated with IMS as a Christian and as just a citizen of this community. And it's my hope that all who are watching, not just tonight, but whenever this will be seen in the future through social media or whatever avenue it's seen, it's my hope that all who see this will share my pride in IMS and my support of IMS. And that's because for the last 51 years, as we tried to explain here in this video, the Interfaith Mission Service really has been a force for good in North Alabama. And it's been able to be a force for good because of the collaborative efforts of its member congregations and all of the other individuals who support IMS, all advocating for the well-being of our community. Now, again, this has been a tough year. It's been a tough year for many families, for many organizations, for our nation, for many of us individually. We faced challenges, health challenges, economic challenges. We've watched as family members and friends have been assailed by this virus. It's been tough, and IMS understands that. Of course, it's also been tough for IMS. It's been tough for IMS because the economic impact and the health impact that this virus and everything else that's happened in 2020 has had on you and your congregations and on many of us have impacted our ability to give to the Interfaith Mission Service. And that's not lost on the IMS board. We understand, and I'm not a board member, but I'm speaking on behalf of the organization, we understand the challenges that this has presented for people. And so we would just say, we hope and pray that you will find a way to still do what you can as you can to support IMS. We appreciate the contributions that you have been able to give, and we hope that you will continue to do so to the best of your ability. And we really appreciate the fact that some of you have demonstrated your support tangibly by even being in attendance for this virtual event. So thank you for that. And I hope you will continue to advocate for IMS going forward, even though we don't exactly know how 2020 is going to resolve and even what lies ahead in 2021. But we're going to do our best, and we hope that you will too, to support IMS. Now let's get to the meat of our program. Almost 20 years ago, the Reverend David Brown, a minister at Emmanuel Presbyterian Church in Tacoma, Washington, posited in a Futurist.com article that 6 trends will have a profound moral and social impact on our public and private lives. Tonight, we're going to focus on 2 of those trends: the growth of religious, cultural, and racial diversity, and the corresponding rise of fundamentalism and even extremism in some faiths. Tonight's panel is well equipped to address these 2 related trends, and our panelists are Ms. Deloa Smith, Dr. Harry Hobbs, Reverend Lynn Hopkins, and Reverend Greg Bentley. Now, all of these names are very well-known names in North Alabama. If you don't know who they are, maybe you've been in a coma for 20 years. I don't know. But either way, if you're not sure who they are or not really clear on all of what they've done, you can read their biographical sketches in our online material that should be a part of this whole Zoom production. So now, here to moderate the panel is Dr. Sarat Praharaj. And Dr. Praharaj is an engineer, he's a local businessman, and is a member of the Hindu Cultural Center of North Alabama here in Huntsville. And so Sarat, where are you? Oh, there you are. Come on up, Sarat. Sarat's going to moderate, and I'm going to socially distance from Sarat while he does so.
Yeah, this is Sarat Praharaj. I'll be taking my seat. I invite all the panel members to come to the stage, please. Thank you. So now that we're all seated, let's get started. Yes, as the MC told you, I'm Dr. Sarat Praharaj, a longtime resident of Huntsville, Alabama. I belong to the Hindu faith, and to represent that, we have a community center called Hindu Cultural Center of North Alabama, located on Smith Drive, which is parallel to the old railroad bed road in the city of Madison. And I welcome anyone and everyone who is interested to come to see the activities that actually go on at the temple. The temple is open to all. There are no restrictions. So please come when you can, and we'll support and praise your presence there. Thank you. So now I welcome all the panel members and the viewing audience. Before I provide short bios on our panel members, let me say that IMS Huntsville has chosen this year a very important and a very difficult topic for today's discussion. It's a pleasure to be with you at home and our distinguished panelists tonight. After some brief comments and introductions, we'll ask questions to our panelists. We have collected some questions from the community and you at home. And you at home can ask questions online, clicking the questions button at the bottom of your viewing screen. If you are using the full screen mode, so you can do it by going to the bottom and asking questions, and it'll be passed on to me. If you like, you can type and send your questions via email at the following address. The address is ask-ims@interfaithmissionservice.org. Let me repeat. It is ask-ims@interfaithmissionservice.org. As it was said before, the theme for this year is "The Future is Now," and focuses on the first two trends or forces of the future as posited by author and pastor David Brown. These two trends are the following, as it has been said before, but let me repeat it again. And those two trends are, one, the growing diversity in religion race, and cultures throughout society. And second, the growth of fundamentalism and extremism in response to the first trend. Obviously, these trends will collide, and we see conflicts arising all too often in the evening news and in our own streets. We/IMS have gathered our panel members representing academia, religious institutions, and diverse community values. This panel of experts will address and answer questions regarding this uncertain future with which we must all grapple. So, in this discussion, we have two overall objectives we'd like to cover in the short period that we have. Objective 1, give our viewing audience a general idea of the first two of the trends as they impact our congregations. That's objective 1. Objective 2 is provide some insight as to how our faith communities might be preparing our members for these changes and challenges. So those are the two objectives I will be covering today. Two of the panel members are present here. The other two are coming to us via Zoom, as you can see. We've gone ahead and shortened their illustrious resumes, so let me just say a few words about the resumes. Won't take too long. To start with, coming via Zoom is Dolores Smith, and I'll call her Dolores from now on, if that's okay, Dolores, who is a licensed professional counselor, LPC, and a diversity, equity, and inclusion subject matter expert, period. During her UAH tenure, UAH, for people who don't know, is the University of Alabama in Huntsville tenure, initially as Vice President for Student Affairs, and her second position as Vice President for Diversity and Multicultural Affairs. Ms. Smith held progressively responsible administrative positions in the areas of race, culture, ethnicity, and inclusion. Next, we have here on the stage is Dr. Harry Hubbs. He has a doctorate in business administration from Florida Institute of Technology, Melbourne, Florida. Apart from his civilian and military positions, since 1978, he was full-time site director for the Florida Institute of Technology, Huntsville, /Redstone from 2017 through 2018. Currently, he is Vice President for Employee Engagement for Huntsville Utilities since 2018. And he says in his background document that since baby boomers are retiring, businesses will have to rely on recruiting, developing, and retaining millennial generation employees long-term to fill these vacancies and remain viable. Key factors to attracting, recruiting, onboarding, motivating, managing, developing, and retaining millennial employees in the news media farms of North Alabama will have to be explored. Next, we have the other panel member, Lynn Hopkins, Reverend Lynn Hopkins. Coming via Zoom again is Lynn Hopkins, and I think you see her, and I see her also here. She is a lifelong activist and a computer geek. These are her words, not mine. Ordained as a Unitarian Universalist minister relatively late in life at age 50. She earned her Master of Divinity degree from Emory and planted the roots of her spirit deep into the southern soil. She brings a passion for interfaith religious exploration, more than 40 years of standing and marching and protesting on the front lines of controversy, and a conviction that liberal religion has the potential to transform our wounded and broken world. She was searching for a small congregation with vibrant personality, firm grounding in UU principles, steadfast dedication to holding and deepening community in covenant, and lively engagement with the community and the larger world. In UUFM, she found all these things along with a warm and enthusiastic welcome. The next panel member who is present here on stage is Reverend Gregory Bentley. He was called to pastorate of the Fellowship Presbyterian Church in Huntsville, Alabama in January of 2012. Reverend Bentley contends that the church is a hospital for sinners and not a museum for saints. It is a vanguard and repository of our noblest aspirations, traditions, and values. In addition to the Black church, the Black family and the Black school must be mission priorities if we are to fully develop our potential as people. So with that, we'll get into some of the question answers. We'll start with Dolores Smith. I want to ask her first and give her about 3 to 5 minutes or so as to what you do now and your view of the future as far as the two objectives that we stated earlier. Dolores?
Thank you all for allowing me to be a part of the panel. I'm very grateful for that. Many of you may not know that I have relocated from Huntsville, Alabama to Florida. And many of you may not know that. And so I love technology because I'm coming to you from Orange Park, Florida, and today it was 81 degrees. I just had to say that. I want to answer that question. Demographic shifts in our country and certainly within our faith communities. And many of you have heard those numbers. The U.S. Census Bureau, as well as many groups like the Pew Research Center and religious groups, let us know that by 2044, 2045, the United States will be a non-majority country. Now, with the country changing to that degree, faith communities cannot remain stagnant. They cannot. We will find ourselves in a very awkward position. One of the very first things that we need to do in our faith communities is take stock of where we are individually within our faith communities. We must do that because, quite frankly, and as no surprise to any of you, many of us have our own sets of baggage, biases, prejudices that we do not want to admit we have. That is unfortunate for us. So one of the things that I do in a service that I offer through the Interfaith Mission Service, and I've been a member on the board for a long time, is we do have to take stock of where we all are to find out how we can best interact and communicate with the communities and around us. So we need to understand this better. So I'm going to ask for a slide to be put up, and this is something that I want to share with all of you. Now, these slides are documents, instruments, resources that we can use in our congregations. Not that we don't know where we are, but they can certainly help us get in touch with where we are. And I'm going to look at them for technological purposes. And Sarat, let me know, I don't want to go over the 5 minutes, I'm just giving an overview, but I'll be coming back to these throughout this presentation. Now, from left to right, that very first one you're looking at is called the Intercultural Development Inventory. It's one that I use a lot, and a lot of people in my field use these type of things. It's to help us to understand the nature, the culture, the background of different people that we are working with. The second one is called the Intercultural Conflict Style Inventory. And that helps us to understand where we tend to disagree and how we can work through those disagreements. The one right below that is called Blue Ocean Brain. Blue Ocean Brain is a self-paced tutorial system that you can get to have individuals work through it on their own. And this last one that is there is one that we can all access at our congregation that is done, I believe this study is done every 10 years. And it's called the American Changing Religious Identity Demographic. And it is something that I use quite a bit to help me keep abreast of what is happening within the faith communities. So I'll come back to some of these as we're going throughout this to help us to understand. The first place we must start is understanding ourselves, our own congregations, and where and how those things are changing. But the world is changing, and we would be very remiss if we do not understand that and move accordingly. There is an African proverb that says, "You can't change the wind, so turn the sail to catch the wind of change." Thank you.
Thank you, Delois. The next is the same question to Dr. Harry Hobbs.
Yes. Well, I would tell you that with the diversity that we're seeing in corporate America, I work in corporate America and have oversight of the HR departments. And from my many years in this community, whether I was a spokesman for the police department, high school teacher, college professor, or a spokesperson for the utility company, I would tell you that diversity is very, very important in all of those. And as our country is becoming more black and brown versus what was the majority Caucasian, there's going to be different religious viewpoints that are going to come to rise. And I think that we need to continue to embrace that diversity, whether it's color or whether it's viewpoints or whether it's the religious views that folks have. We know here in America that primarily our country was formed as a Judeo-Christian belief system. We understand that history, but also we understand we've asked other folks to come in and be a part of this beautiful mosaic. And so with that said, we've got to allow them to bring their faith groups. And when it comes to fundamentalism in America and religious conservatism, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Folks can express those viewpoints, but you can't put those on other people. People have got to have their own viewpoints as well. You can't overpower people with your religious viewpoints. So I think we're at a juncture in our history today where we have got to continue to give people enough space at work, at home, in the communities to express their faith groups. But in the same token, we got to remember our history, and it's okay to express your Judeo-Christian belief systems in a fundamentalist way as long as it's ethically and legally accepted.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Harry. Same question again to Reverend Lynn Hopkins. She's coming on Zoom right now. Here she is. Lynn?
Thank you. I'm honored to be invited to be here among you. I am remote from Montgomery. Um, as a Unitarian Universalist, I live and work and worship in the midst of multi-faith community full-time. Our fellowship in Montgomery is a pretty typical UU congregation made up of Christians and Jews and Hindus and Buddhists and Wiccans and atheists and probably about 50% dedicated agnostics. Preaching to that lot is as challenging as you might imagine, but being among them is one of the very greatest joys of my life. As Unitarian Universalists, we gather around a covenant of spiritual principles rather than creed or theological concepts. And so it's natural that most of my work in the community is in the context of multi-faith coalition. I have a reputation for fostering diversity within community. From the time that I arrived in Montgomery in 2014, our congregation went from 3% to 20% people of color, 2% to 25% adults under 40, and 2% to 15% LGBTQ. And you can imagine how much that has shifted the culture of the congregation, as well as the spiritual life and the opportunities for growth. Of course, given the limited scope of the functions in a house of worship, it's a far simpler thing to bring diverse people together in that setting than it is to build connection and community in our daily lives. I don't pretend to be an expert in accomplishing that feat. However, I have had opportunities for meaningful multi-faith engagement in places as different as Colorado Springs and Selma, Alabama. And I know there are ways of our being together, of welcoming and engaging with each other that build trust and make pathways to fellowship across boundaries of belief and tradition. Of course, that's an awful lot of things that we tend to do in our culture that accomplish just the opposite. If we are to pursue peaceful coexistence, let alone community, we have a great many cultural assumptions to overcome, some significant choices to make, and some long-standing habits and practices to unlearn. But I feel certain that we can, if we are willing to take that difficult road that leads to sustaining and enriching life on this planet. I have been accused of unreasonable optimism, and I'm perfectly okay with that charge. I've come to believe that in this often hostile and challenging world, a good portion of what it means to hold and to live into a vital, life-giving faith sometimes demands that we stand fast in our truth and our hope, despite all evidence to the contrary. But there is much reason for hope. I've watched and participated as gatherings of individuals from widely differing faith traditions, people whose beliefs made absolutely no sense to each other, people who look like heretics to each other in their respective traditions. Nonetheless, come to know and respect and trust one another, to depend on each other, and even at times take risks or make sacrifices on behalf of each other. Now, the future I see in my mind's eye, or maybe that's my spirit's eye, is beloved community of the Orthodox and the liberal and the syncretic and the apostate of every religious tradition seated at the table and praying at the altar in peaceful and loving diversity.
Very good. Thanks very much, Lynn. Now moving to our fourth panelist, who is right here on stage, is Reverend Gregory Bentley. The same question is?
Thank you. When I think of diversity, especially in the American context, it's a double-edged sword. it's a double-edged sword because diversity is, when you look at the natural world, it's a good thing. Diversity helps a population to be vibrant and vital and healthy. But let's face it, we just had 70 million people in this country voted for a man that said that diversity isn't a good thing, that we want this country to continue to be a white settler nation, which it was founded as. When we look at the founding of America, and this is one thing we have to do, face ourselves. We have to explode some mythologies about ourselves. We have to interrogate our own sense of exceptionalism, because when we look at our very founding, we see the genocide of a group of people and the theft of their land and the enslavement of Africans. So until we're willing to face that and to realize that feeds straight into what we're seeing manifest now, we're not going to be able to get beyond that. So yes, diversity is a good thing, but a whole lot of Americans would disagree. And that's the challenge.
Yeah, that's for sure. That is a challenge. So I've got many other questions that were provided by the leaders of within our congregations and our viewing audience. And also our viewing audience can provide other questions, as I said before, either in Zoom or email. Okay, as you can tell, that some of the questions that I have here are probably going to repeat somewhat from one to the next, but maybe different facets are there in those questions. But so there'll be some repetition, so please don't mind that, but let's try. So one of the questions is, okay, we have talked about the trends 1 and 2, and we have described what the trend 1 and trend 2 are. How would you describe the possible friction points between trends 1 and 2? And I realize that you gentlemen and ladies have already touched upon it, but let's see if you can expand some of the thoughts in that direction. So we're talking about the friction points between trends 1 and trend 2, trend 1 and trend 2. So first I'll start with Delois. Delois? Go ahead, Delois.
Might have technical difficulty.
Delois, can you hear me?
She's talking, but
we cannot hear you for some reason.
I had to make certain that I had my mic unmuted.
Oh,
and
okay. I've done that before. Yes.
Yes, I'm making sure that I'm muting it. So, but let me address that. Now, here's the friction. On the one hand, we may be within and go to our places of worship and hold hands or be with each other and talk about, oh, how wonderful everything is and how wonderful the world is. But then someone, as Lynn and others have said, comes in around and among us, and all of a sudden, we do not like them, we don't want this, we can't tolerate that. And the very tenets of the faith and belief system that we espouse goes by the wayside. You know, we, on the one hand, cannot espouse the tenets of acceptance and respect and civility and love and community. And then we turn and treat a fellow human the very opposite of what we espouse to believe. We have to not do that, must not do that, and find a way to bring in congruence those two things. But somehow, and this is a testament to all of us, somehow we find ways to rationalize how we should do that. So we personally need to examine where our faith and how our faith would cause us to exclude other people when we espouse one thing and then we practice another.
Okay, okay. So next, the same question to Lynn.
that friction is very present, I think, in our society right now. I think more and more, as particularly as white folk who are used to being in charge are more and more coming into contact with people of color, people from different cultures, encountering different religious traditions. You get a number of fiery reactions. We, in my congregation, have this notion that we welcome everybody. But a few years ago, there was a large national organization that is white supremacist, anti-Muslim, anti-immigrant in nature that held its convention in Montgomery. And this organization had been seen to disrupt Unitarian Universalist worship spaces in the past. So we were expecting to be under assault. Now we got lucky. They didn't come around. Maybe they found out that we had cameras mounted in about 12 different places in our building. But in preparing for that and understanding that we may very well encounter people with fundamentalist beliefs who come from the same sorts of traditions that Unitarians and Universalists come from, which is the puritanical early settlements on this continent, and somehow we grew very differently. Our conviction is that we welcome every person. We will not tolerate every behavior. We refuse to reject the inherent worth and dignity of any individual, including the sociopath, and including the white supremacist. We insist on honoring their inherent worth and dignity as a human being. However, in order to protect one another, in order to provide sanctuary and safety for one another, community must have boundaries, and our boundaries are rooted in behavior.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. The same question again to Harry.
Well, I'm just over here. I'm so excited to talk about this because this is my field of study. And I would submit to you a lot of these issues, as we touch on racism and extremism, is generational. Because if you look at the millennial generation, which is the largest living and working segment in America, they don't have the same hang-ups as the generations before them. They're the most diverse. They have interracially married more. They're more educated. They're more open to ideas. Because a lot of times, a lot of these prejudices are input into them from folks from my generation, to be quite honest. We bring that to the table, and a lot of these young folks are rejecting that. And a lot of these friction points that other generations are having, the millennial generation is not having those friction points. And so I think we need to look at that as well, the generational issues that are out there. And myself being multiracial, born in the Deep South with a white father and a black mother in 1960, I was a little ahead of my time. People were not very receptive to that. But in today's world, people are receptive to that. And in the same way that they're receptive to the color shift in America, people are becoming more receptive to different ways of living out your faith. But again, I think America is big enough, diverse enough, and open enough for us all to practice our faiths and to respect one another. Because in the workplace, where we spend more of our waking hours than we do at home, you're going to have to be able to get along with other folks. As a commander in the Army, as other panelists mentioned, I had Wiccans that served, I had paganists that served, and Judeo-Christians that served. And as long as they could continue their mission, and whatever their service was ethically, legally, and morally okay, then they had the opportunity for those services to take place. But again, we have to give each of us the room to do that. But from what the pastor said, that's real. The racism that's in America today is real. The racial reckoning is real. And I think forums like this help break down those walls so folks can express who they are and to recognize that white privilege is real and reverse racism is real, and we need to deal with all those things as they come about.
Very good. Thank you very much. A very interesting discussion, very interesting point that you just raised. And I want to ask the same question to the Reverend also, Gregory.
Well, again, I think we have to wade through some misconceptions about ourselves. We really have to face who we've truly been. What we're seeing now, this reckoning, Dr. Hobbs, that we're seeing now, it didn't spring out of nowhere. It has a history to it. But, you know, when you think about, and I think about the history of black people in this country, this has not been a welcoming place to black folk. 250 years of legalized slavery, another 100 years of segregation. In fact, I would argue that we couldn't even call America a democracy until 1965. Up until 1965, most black people couldn't even vote in this country or were legally barred and extra legally barred. So we really have to interrogate our own history and our own sense of self and ask, you know, why do we hold these views that go against the evidence, that goes against the actual history of how we have behaved? Now, thank God we have some other justice-minded folks, some freedom-loving people who push back against that. Black, white, and all across the racial spectrum. And that's the tradition I try to root myself in. People who swim against the tide, who realize that there is a more excellent way, that we can be better and we don't have to be prisoners of our past, that we can move toward a better place. But we don't get to that better place by denying the past. We have to recognize that it is still with us and that it flames up from time to time like a volcano that's running subterraneously, and then it finds an opening and it gushes forth. So how do we get enough people, as Dr. King said, up on that moral arc of the universe, bending it toward justice, to create the beloved community where all of our religious spaces are welcoming spaces, you know, whether I'm a Christian or a Hindu or a Jewish, whatever the case may be, where I see our common humanity. To have unity in diversity. It doesn't mean that we become something other than what we are. It just means that we have a mutual respect that allows us to coexist and to thrive together.
Very good, very interesting. And so the next question is very related to this, actually talks about the steps that you would take to accepting diverse people. So let me read the question fully. What sorts of steps, venues, processes, activism, etc., are most likely to move rigid fundamentalists closer to accepting diverse people, that is, races, religions, cultures, and gender orientations, etc., in equal status and regard as people in their own group? So this is the way you tell us what the steps should be. And I want to start right now for this question with Delois.
I wanted to start by addressing that when I was at the University of Alabama, Huntsville, and I was in student affairs, we had students who hailed from 102 countries on the campus. The first thing that I needed to do, same for us in the faith communities, I set about to understand each one of those countries because I was serving the people on that campus who came from those countries. Did that take time? Yes, indeed it did. So what's one of the first steps we need to do? We need to assess the people in our faith community. We need to assess the communities surrounding our faith communities, and we need to learn who is in our neighborhood, who is in our congregation. Then we need to, as I said before, we need to be honest about where we are. We need to get in touch with where we are. Those instruments and resources that I put up before. If you don't have a means of doing that yourself in your congregation, then that is a way to start trying in order to do that. It's very hard to be introspective, but it's healing to do that. And the next thing that we need to do is begin to work through what we find that are negative for us and accentuate the things that are positive for us. It takes time to do that. Do not be afraid that if you are not adept in doing that, bring someone in who knows how to do that, who can guide you through it, who can help you. But we absolutely have to start with that. I give a little quiz when I'm doing workshops that's called How Diverse is Your Universe? And it is a quiz that I ask about 25 questions. A person checks off categories. At the end, you give a tally. And when you get done, you see where you spend most of your time and who you spend your time with. It's very telling. If your universe is only with and around people just like you, when you are around others, you are more likely to make some horrific mistakes because you know nothing about those individuals. You don't spend any time with them. You don't know anything about their faith, their food preferences, nothing. So we do have to start trying to do that. Also, start reaching across the proverbial aisle, as we say. Whatever your faith group is, try to reach out to other faith groups. Someone has to start doing that. And I can certainly speak to that. My husband and I, my husband is African American, and we came to Huntsville, Alabama, and we were the only people of color in a predominantly white congregation. But the white congregation reached out to us and not the reverse. And someone has to start that. So you got to find a way to reach out and do that. It is a sad testament to us in the faith communities to say that we have the tenets of what it means to reach out to others, but then we cloister ourselves and say, we do not know how to teach you how to be loving, how to be accepting, how to be gracious, how to be kind. We don't know how to do that because we ourselves don't embody the very things we teach. Sometimes take a chance and go back and look at the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Do that. I challenge you to do that. That document is one that I had in my office, and it reminded me many of the things you've heard the other panelists talk about. Those things, that the Declaration of Human Rights is what all of us want. So the first step is self-assessment. The second step is once you find out where those strengths and weaknesses are, strengthen what is good, work on what is not good, and then begin to reach out and build the bridges.
Okay, great. Harry?
Thank you. That's all right. My first step, if I could be king for a day, would be drastic. If you could physically, mentally accept it, to do 3 years in the military service of your choice for America. Because here's what happens. You're talking to a 30-year retired Army officer. Let me put that out there. It forces you into a group of folks that maybe you've never seen before in your life. It forces you to work together for a common cause, and everything that Sister Lois was talking about happens in basic training. You have to learn what somebody believes in. You have to respect what somebody's religion is. You see their work habits. You learn about their families, and you build that camaraderie. So if I had my way about it, everybody would serve 2 to 3 years in the military service, and there's some other goodness that would come out of that. But on the practical sense, I think that in every formal education system, we understand young minds are formed, child psychology, between 5 years old and 8 years old. Most of whoever we're going to be and our right and wrong systems internalized is formed. I think cultural diversity 101 needs to be taught at every level, preschool up to whatever level, to the PhD level, as this changes. And then that's embedded in folks that they need to be open-minded to other folks that don't look like them, think like them, or pray like them. And as a multiracial person that's experienced the color line in America and experienced racism from African Americans as well as Caucasians, I would tell you that people just have to accept who you are. Part of it is acceptance. You got to accept a person's identity, their sexual orientation, their belief system, their race decision. Most of my life, people try to make me pick a box. Either you got to pick black or you got to pick white. I picked both. And then finally, America got on board. Okay? So that's what we got to open our minds and let folks decide who they are and respect the decision they make. And at the Thanksgiving table at my house, it's like the United Nations. Within my family, it's Puerto Rican, African American, Caucasian, and just normal, good old white folks. Because those are my son-in-laws, those are my families, those are my daughters. And so we have got to come to that realization and get over the past. But I am with you, Pastor. We've got to deal with the past. And most of us are not going to be able to move past that unless there's a discussion. And I think now at this juncture in America, we're willing to have these hard discussions.
Great, that's great. We need this discussion for sure. So, Reverend Gregory?
Yeah, my denomination, Presbyterian Church USA, we are currently engaged in what we're calling the Matthew 25 vision, and it has three foci: building congregational vitality, dismantling structural racism, and eradicating systemic poverty. Notice I said structural racism. I'm not really interested in whether somebody individually or personally is racist. I'm more concerned about how do we dismantle racist systems that advantage one group and disadvantage another group or groups. I think oftentimes we get caught up in the individual, the personal, when it's really the systemic. And there are many authors, there are many people who are much smarter than I am who have written on this. Richard Rothstein, he wrote a book called The Color of Law, and it just demonstrates how in the 20th century, how black people were disadvantaged systematically by our own government, right? Programs that, government programs that even black folk who had fought for this country were excluded from. Where one group of people were able to build wealth in another group of people. That has generational implications, right? So I don't want us to get caught up in whether or not this person or that person is racist. I'm really not concerned about that. I'm concerned about how systems function to create advantage and disadvantage, and that's what we need to aim at. We're told, the book tells us, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities in high places. So put on the whole armor. We're wrestling against systems, not against individuals. And that's a real challenge when you're talking about something that has such a long history and is so embedded and interwoven into our national fabric. But I think it's formidable, but not insurmountable. If you get enough people working at it, we can chart a new course for our collective destiny. So, but you have to, and I like what Ephesians 6 says when you look at the armor that is mentioned there. The first piece of armor you got to put on is the belt of truth. None of the other armor works. The shield of faith, it won't work. The helmet of salvation, it won't work if you don't have on the belt of truth. We can't build a common life together on falsehood. We have to tell the truth about who we have been, and we can begin together, though painstakingly and arduously, we can begin to build a new future together that won't be imprisoned by our past, where we can break free from the chains of our past. But you can't do it by denying it. You have to face it. You got to face it before you can fix it.
I see. Very interesting. Reverend Lynn?
Pastor Bentley, next time I'm in Huntsville, I'm at your church.
You're welcome.
I
Come on by. You can preach. You come and preach for me.
you better watch out saying that now. Now, I am so on board with this idea that it starts with the truth. It starts with the truth. What we got to do in order to begin just the very, very first step of breaking down any of these barriers is truth telling. And that means for white folk sitting down, shutting up, and allowing ourselves to be uncomfortable, because we as white folk are brought up to believe that we don't ever have to feel uncomfortable. If if we get uncomfortable, you've hurt my feelings. So that's where we start, right? And this is something my congregation and my entire national organization is working at really hard right now, to various degrees of success. But making space for those of us who have been in the dominant paradigm to hear those things that we have successfully, whether consciously or unconsciously, very successfully shut out from our discourse. But now, as I understood that question, you were asking, how can we help the fundamentalists? I think the word rigid was in there too.
Yes, that was the question.
I don't know that I know how to do that. I have met some folks who have emerged from the space of fundamentalism, particularly in a Christian tradition, especially in a white supremacist ideology. And the way that they tell me that happens is they have to decide. They have to be willing to expose themselves to it. And I don't know that we can, on the progressive side of the spectrum, I don't know that we can tug at them, except that we do have a power in education, in public education. We need to make doggone sure that every one of those children sitting in the public schools is hearing truth that their parents might not be telling them. Now, unfortunately, in Alabama, the public schools, they aren't exactly integrated. In Montgomery, I know it's about 95% black. So we need to be in the media. We need to be in every public forum that we can to get this truth out, to get out the truth of white privilege and white supremacy culture in a way that invites people to expose themselves. And we need to be a living witness of that barrier breaking experience and the joy and the power that comes with connection and community that includes all of us colors and gender orientations and all of those other strange things that we human beings can be.
Great, great. So to follow that, I want to ask a question in reference to the growing religious diversity. So the three-part question, A, B, C. So we can go first A, the B, and then C. So we'll do first A. How should Christians respond to denial of religious rights of others? Reverend Hopkins, you're the first one.
I'm afraid I'm not qualified to answer that because I am not in the Christian fold.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Reverend Gregory?
I'm going to share a personal story. I can't think of, I think it was a clerk in Kentucky who, when a same-sex couple came to get a marriage license, she refused to issue the license. And she claimed it violated her conscience. You know, that's fair enough. There's a remedy: resign. because the law, if the law says issue the license, you have to issue the license. We had a knockdown drag out about this in Sunday school. I was raised in a tradition where I've called gay men out of their names. I've called gay women out of their names. But part of what happens, a funny thing happens when you follow this man named Jesus long enough, you start to change. You start to undergo a process of what Jesus told Nicodemus, being born again. And you start to see people the way that God sees them. And when it comes to civil society, everybody deserves and is entitled to equal protection under the law. Everybody. Now, you can feel how you want to, and on a personal level, or even within, to a certain extent, in your ecclesiastical spaces. But when it comes to what binds us together in civil society, everybody deserves and is entitled to equal protection under the law. And if your conscience is bound by that, then don't take a position that will cause you to do anything that would bind your conscience. So, and that's something I would go to the mat with anybody over, because, as Dr. King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. If you allow it to spring up over here, it will spread just like a cancer. Anytime there's injustice, we all should oppose it and condemn it, because I think it was Jürgen Moltmann, the great German theologian, said, he said, they were, when the Nazis came, they came for the Unionists. I wasn't in the Union, so I didn't say anything. They came for the Jews. I wasn't a Jew, so I didn't say anything. They came for the Roma people. I wasn't a Roma person, and on and on and on. They came for the homosexuals. I wasn't a homosexual. Finally, they came for me, and there was nobody left to say anything. So part of what it means to be a part, to see our common humanity, is to be willing to stand up for one another when we're being mistreated, and to realize that anytime there's an injustice, if we don't say anything, it will spread like a virus. So we have to stand against it, if out of nothing more than self-interest, because that's the nature of injustice.
Great. Harry?
Well, I'm of the Christian faith, and first of all, Sister Lynn, I appreciate that you passed on that. Much respect. And I'm an ordained minister, go to the military church, the Bicentennial Chapel. And I would tell you, as Christians, and probably if we did a statistical check, even today, 70% of America say I'm a Judeo-Christian believing person. So I'm not going to go there. That's another whole dissertation. But as a Christian, we can't be bullies. How can we just want our faith observed and then we don't care if someone else doesn't get the opportunity? And then we call ourselves followers of Christ? That's just being a bully. I think we have enough bullying going on in America today. I think there's enough space that whatever your belief system is, you should believe in it enough to where you can allow someone else to have their belief system. And I think that's one of the most un-American things that we can do. I think we came to America. I know we keep revising why we came to America, as we revised the Civil War as well. But that's another dissertation and sermon as well. But it was for religious freedom. It was for the ability to live what we now know as the American dream. And if we're going to keep that dream alive, we've got to give people space to live out their faith and live out their dreams as well. And one of the organizations my wife and I have in those steps is an organization called Community Awareness for Youth, where we set up 4 pillars of success for young people: health, education, careers, and finances. And some folks here have supported that over the last 10 years. And one of the first things that we made clear was, whether you a Judeo-Christian, the LGBT community, or trans community, or whatever, all of that is left out. This is open to the public. And that's how we have to look at things. We have to open it up to the public to give everyone an opportunity to resources to succeed.
Okay, great. Delois, the same question to you also.
Now, I want to, and so we all should be very, very, very honest here. Now, Pravat, if I remember the question, well, it had a part there that said, how do Christians deal with the denial of the faith, the freedoms of others? Is that about what you said?
Yes, the question was, how should Christians respond to denial of religious rights of others?
So let me say that there, among many, there are two foundational belief systems that Christians who believe in the Word of God, the Bible, we're talking Christian because that was the caveat for it. Here are two things to keep in mind. There's the passage of Scripture which says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Now, when we start talking about Christians, that is a foundational belief system that the Christian operates on. Now, when you read that, what you hear is exclusion. You do. But that is a belief system that a Christian has. And that Christian is going to try to help other faith groups understand there is one way to God through Jesus Christ. Now, that's what that question is talking about. Now, an individual has a right to believe that because the Bible and their belief and in God, that's why that person is going to struggle with that. But there's also another passage of Scripture which says, I became all things to all men, women, in order to win some, not everybody, in order to win some. You have every right to say to someone else, here's what my belief is, here is why I believe it. I understand that it is different from yours. I will listen to you if you will listen to me. I very well may come to some understanding of your part of your faith, and you very well may come to a part of mine. That's where you must start from. But I'm helping us to understand that when a Christian is saying, I am excluding other faith groups, there are some tenets in that faith, and those are just two of them. And that's what is happening there. Not everyone is going to embrace your position, but you can still practice civility and respect to hear another person's side, allow them to hear yours. You may or may not come to an agreement, but that is what is happening when you qualify it, when you say Christians.
Okay, that's great. I've got B and C here in the same question, which are not necessarily religious diversity, but they are other than that. The questions are these, and I'll combine B and C together. What to do about discrimination of other beliefs, and how are we all to interact with those who differ with our beliefs? Lynn Hopkins?
Well, again, I am a member of a tradition that is generally excluded from the public civic display of religion because I personally and most of my congregation does not identify as a member of the Christian faith that was founded by Paul. Now, many of us do consider ourselves followers of Jesus, but not as a unique savior. So I don't feel like I'm in a position that I can tell Christians what Christians should be doing when I myself am not one.
Okay. Sam, two questions for you, Reverend Gregory. And you touched upon it already, but answer, please.
I thought I had already answered it, but okay, I come back.
Okay, this is about we're talking about diversity. So, what to do about discrimination of other beliefs?
Oh, yes.
And how are we all to interact with those who differ from our beliefs?
Well, and I'll kind of build on what I said in my last response. Look, if I run a bakery and a same-sex couple comes in there, I only need to know two things. What kind of cake you want, and do you have the money to pay for it? It's the only thing I need to know in terms of how we interact with one another in civil society. You can feel how you want to feel, but you don't have a right to discriminate against that person. We just can't tolerate that in a civil society. We just can't. And for me, it's just not Christ-like. It doesn't demonstrate. It does not serve as a good example of how Jesus went about his business. I think oftentimes we try to project onto Jesus our own prejudices, and we try to make Jesus and God hate people that we hate. And rather than us, I think Abraham Lincoln said, instead of us trying to get God on our side, we need to get on God's side. If we get on God's side, we know we're going to be on the right side, instead of carving out a position and then saying, well, God hates this group of folk or that group of folk. No, that's the folk that you hate, and you want to put that in God's mouth, but that's not the God I've come to know that was revealed in Jesus. I think we just have to, part of this is just growing up, just getting to a place in our own spiritual maturity and evolution that we can just own our stuff rather than just projecting it on to a tradition. Some of this is just, we just need to say we have some messed up ways of thinking about one another. And we need to change. We need to get better. We need to be transformed. We need to be, as Jesus told Nicodemus, to be born again, to have a revolution of consciousness, to have a change in our value system, to have a transformation in the way that we see the world. But if we think that we are, pretty much okay, that can't happen because we won't open ourselves to it. We won't open ourselves to the life-saving power of the Spirit, which can bring us to a better place where we begin to see one another through the eyes of God. And it doesn't mean that we have to become the same. I don't think uniformity is a good aim in society. Diversity actually is a strength, which means that you're going to, necessarily create friction, but it's creative friction. A car can't roll if there's no friction between the tire and the ground. If that tire is too slick, it's just going to stand right there and do this. But in order to really make progress, there has to be creative tension and friction to move forward. The thing is, we mature enough to handle it in such a way that it becomes creative and not destructive friction.
Because of time, I'll have to sort of shorten that your answer. But let me take just a minute each. Harry and followed by Dolores, the same question.
Well, I'll just, so eloquently answered by my colleagues, but as a Christian, I'll just say that we need to follow the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Simple. And oh, by the way, abide by all the laws, all the ordinance, the homeowners association, all those civic and organizational things that lead us to be our best selves and the higher angels to play out in us. And just do things to make your grandmother proud of you. I hope you're proud of me, Grandma. That's all I got.
Great, very good, thank you. Dolores, your 1 minute before we adjourn.
Okay, and I would say that very earlier, Pastor Bentley answered that. He said, when they came for all these different people, and then when they came for me, there was no one to speak for me. So that means we speak up for others when we see them being discriminated against. We have to speak up for those if someone is then going to speak up for us. And we need to start first in making sure that we are not discriminating against others. Pastor Bentley also mentioned about the Supreme Court case with the cake. And when it was argued and the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the cake maker, it wasn't because of his faith. It was not because of the faith. I read the amicus brief because I wanted to thoroughly understand what happened there. The reason they ruled in his favor was because the city commission did not allow him to speak properly in the commission. And they allowed people to talk against him during the city commission. and violated his rights in the city commission. That's why the Supreme Court ruled in his favor, not because of the cake. So, you have to look at his rights were discriminated against, and then he discriminated against the people who needed the cake baked. So no one's looking out for anybody else. That's what we have to do. And so, again, and the Supreme Court said that particular case was very unique, and others who come for religious faith and freedom, take note, Supreme Court said, we will take it individually and look at the discriminatory practices.
Okay. Very good. Thank you very much. Well, we come to that time of the evening, and I've been told that the time is up. So let me thank all the panel members and all the people in the television land there on Zoom. Thank you very much for attending this conference, this discussion. I personally have learned a lot from this discussion, and we should do this more often so that we can all learn from each other a lot. Thank you very much, and thanks again. We'll move on.
Well, if we were in a room full of people and we had a full audience, I'd be saying let's give them a round of applause. I guess for the paltry few that are here, let's give them a round of applause. To our two virtual panelists, I want to say we're sorry that you're not here with us. And I'll just say for myself, I'm not going to try to speak for the audience, but for myself, Reverend Lynn and my friend Reverend Greg, I think I got enough church tonight that I should be good for about a month at least. So that was awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I can now lay back in the bed and be guilt-free for the next few weekends. Thank you. And Harry, it's always good to be part of a program that you're part of. I know a lot of people, like me, didn't really, I've always liked Harry. Harry's a great guy, great to interact with, but he used to be a mystery to me. I would look at Harry and think, what is he? And now we all know. Harry just told us. So thank you. Harry, your insights are great. We appreciate you, Harry. And Delois, I think she's gone. I don't see her on the screen now. But Delois, she just had to throw that out there, that it's 81 degrees where she is, isn't she? She just had to throw that out there. But anyway, we miss Delois, and we're glad that she joined us tonight. We've now reached a point, I should mention too, that there was an informational slide that was up during Delois's remarks. And if you missed some of that information, I think it had some website information and some other things. If you want to capture that or try to see what was being referenced, I've been told that is on the IMS website. Is that right? That's what I was told. So it should be on the IMS website. So we've now reached a point of the program where we present awards, and that's what this gala, when it was a gala, has always been about. And we normally focus on 4 areas: interfaith cooperation, racial equity, social justice, and community service, and we're going to do that tonight. However, because of what we've been dealing with in 2020, we've added an additional category, and that is the Pandemic Service Leadership Award. We understand that there are a lot of people in this nation and in this community who are working on the front lines. We're talking about our sanitation workers, our cashiers, and the garbage collectors, and all of these folks who are interacting with the public on the front lines on a daily basis, literally risking their health, not knowing who they're coming into contact with and what that person's health is. And we know that our society could not function without these folks, and we appreciate that. However, we know that beyond just these frontline workers, that there is a special group of frontline people that we feel at IMS has to be acknowledged. And those are the people who are our medical professionals, the people who are not only on the front lines in terms of dealing with the general public, but who are on the front lines fighting the disease, the virus, and who are trying to bring healing and comfort to those hundreds of thousands of people, really more than that, millions of people that have been infected by this virus. And they're also dealing with the family members in these challenging times when families can't visit people in hospitals the way we used to be able to do. And so we want to take some time out this evening to acknowledge our healthcare professionals for their hard work, their bravery, their devotion, their selflessness in putting themselves at risk in a way that is unique to help all of us as we try to survive and make our way back through this pandemic. And so tonight, IMS has invited Mr. Jeff Sams, who is the Chief Operating Officer of the Huntsville Hospital Health System, to join us. Mr. Sams, are you with us? Okay. Come on up, Mr. Sams. We want to present you with this, and as I see you walking up with your mask, oh, that's my hanky. That's not going to work. As I see you walking up with your mask, I'm going to put mine on here so that we can, and hopefully you can understand me through the mask, so that we can present you with the Interfaith Mission Service 2020 Pandemic Service Leadership Award. And this goes to the Huntsville Hospital System, and it's being presented on behalf of Aladdin Bashir, who is the chair of the IMS Leadership Council on this day, November the 10th, 2020. Mr. Sams, thank you.
Thank you.
To you, and also to all of the people that you represent here this evening. And I would shake your hand. I can do an elbow.
Let's do the elbow.
Let's do the elbow. All right.
Thank you, sir.
All right. And feel free to make some remarks.
Yeah, I'll be very, I'm going to take that off so you can hear me. First of all, I only accept this on behalf of the thousands of frontline healthcare workers who, right now, a few miles down the road, are there if you need them. And it's been an interesting year. We started back in March. I remember standing in a parking lot of Governor's Drive trying to open a flu and fever clinic in about 48 hours and huddling with a group of caregivers who, when this is brand new and scary, they come over and they volunteer, all colors, all races. We stand in a circle and we say a prayer and we open a clinic. And it's gone on from there. It's been a crazy, emotional, challenging year, but I could not be more proud of our staff who throughout northern Alabama have stepped up all the way from Red Bay to Boaz to take care of your neighbors and your community. You would be proud of them. I could tell you stories all night long, but I just want you to know how committed they are and how much we appreciate you all recognizing what they've done. I will make sure that the staff know, and it means a lot coming from this group. I congratulate you on an outstanding program. I enjoyed getting to listen tonight, and I appreciate you all recognizing us so much. So on behalf of the 15,000 caregivers in the Huntsville Hospital Health System, thank you for recognizing us, and I'll make sure they know. So thank you.
And while Mr. Sams is representing Huntsville Hospital, and we know that Huntsville Hospital is integral to healthcare in North Alabama, there are other hospitals. There are also independent doctors' offices and clinics, and we view them all as being the recipients of this award tonight. And again, Mr. Sams, thank you for representing the thousands of people that are serving us in this capacity. And I don't know how many people watching or those of you present here tonight have had to get a COVID test. I've done it twice, and in fact, the second time, Mr. Sams, I did it at the flu and fever clinic, and I can tell you that the service was great, and you all have set up something there that was awesome. And of course, I was also happy to get a negative test. But I know you didn't have anything to do with that. I know it wasn't rigged in my favor. But that still made me feel good. But seriously, but great service that is being done there. Really appreciate it. All right, I want to bring up now Tim Tyson, who who works with IMS in the Interfaith Cooperation Ministry area as a manager, and Tim, my longtime friend, Tim is going to present the next award.
Thank you, David. As always, it's a pleasure to follow you on the program. You're a good warm-up act, and I appreciate that very much. The Jeffrey Ballin Memorial Award is for groups or individuals in the city who also advocate the same principles that the Interfaith Mission Service. The International Society of Huntsville seeks to remind those in our area of the rich cultural and faith traditions that we all enjoy. And so it's my pleasure to present this award, the Jeffrey Ballin Memorial Award, to the International Society of Huntsville. And Belinda Ong is coming up to the stage to get this award. She's been the chairperson of the International Festival, iFest, in Huntsville for 10 years, serving in this capacity and helping to advocate a faith group and cultural inclusion in our community.
Thank you very
Belinda.
much.
No, would you like to say a few words? I'm sorry.
I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of the International Society board member for the support that IMS gave us. Our organization effort is to promote diversity and awareness through this very fun festival. So thank you so much for always being so supportive of our effort. Thank you.
You want to introduce me? Good evening. My name is Benita Gill. I'm a co-manager with Amy Slamp for the Racial Equity Ministry area. The IMS created the Marilyn Mabry Racial Harmony Award to commemorate Mrs. Mabry's work in the Huntsville community. Mrs. Mabry, who passed in 2011, was dedicated to building a beloved community by engaging people from all sectors, including the faith community, to cross racial and cultural barriers, thereby fostering improved race and multicultural relations. Approximately 2 years ago, the governing boards of Church Street Cumberland Presbyterian Church and Weatherly Heights Baptist Church met to explore ways in which the two congregations could come together. The desired outcome was to make meaningful impacts on the lives of each member. Last year, through the membership of Dr. David Friedman of Weatherly Heights Baptist Church and Dr. Mitchell Walker of Church Street Cumberland Presbyterian Church, brought the two churches together and embarked on a spiritual journey that went on for 6 consecutive Sunday afternoons. Each Sunday afternoon therein, the congregants worshiped together and engaged in conversations on race relations. IMS has blessed to witness the building and cultivation of relationships on so many levels that was cultivated and brought together by these two gentlemen between 2 different congregations, 2 different denominations, and 2 different races. This year's award recipients, Dr. David Freeman and Dr. Mitchell Walker, truly foster racial harmony. Dr. David Freeman and Mitchell Walker will receive the award. Next are Patricia Smith and June Wilson, co-managers of the Social Justice Ministry area.
Well, you've got one half of the team. I'm Patricia Smith, and my co-chair is zooming in. But tonight I have the honor of presenting the Charles L. Ray Memorial Social Justice Award. Many of you remember Charles L. Ray, a local area leader in business, and he was the chairman of the board of Redstone Federal Credit Union. He was the owner and operator of Nell's Funeral Home. He was an educator at the Madison County Public School System, a holder of prestigious positions with the Huntsville-Madison County Community Action Agency and the United States Army Aviation and Missile Command. He was a member of Redstone Village, First Stop, Harris Home for Children, Huntsville Human Relations Committee, and the Interfaith Mission Service. It was his unwavering commitment to serving the underserved that has led to this award being given in his honor to individuals and organizations that embody his commitment to equity and service. Tonight, I am here to introduce someone that I met almost 5 years ago. And what a dynamo she is, but so much more. She's the lead organizer with an organization called Faith in Action Alabama, a licensed and certified life orientations coach and trainer, a motivational speaker, a workshop facilitator, a published author, and an ordained elder who has spent the tenor of her life inspiring hundreds of people in private and public audiences, and to help break down personal barriers which impede professional, personal, spiritual growth and development. And I am honored to call her my friend. Tonight, please welcome Stephanie R. Strong. This year's Charles L. Ray Memorial Social Justice Award goes to Faith in Action Alabama and Stephanie Strong, its lead organizer.
Thank you, Patricia, and thank you, IMS. I am deeply honored and appreciative and grateful for this award. I know that I stand on the shoulders of those who have gone before me, and I tread in the shoes and paths of those who are still blazing trails for social justice. Faith in Action Alabama is a faith-based, multiracial, multi-faith community organizing organization, and our work around social justice has been ongoing for almost 5 years in Montgomery, Mobile, Birmingham, and right here in Huntsville. And I tell you, the very tenets of our faith values, is what are the very core of what grounds us in our work. And to be able to build congregations across the state of Alabama, across race and faith lines, has been a major building block of what it means for grassroots organizing. And so Faith in Action Alabama, I accept this award on behalf of the many volunteer leaders who drive the engine of our work around social justice. And with recently, just so that you'll know some of the impact that we've made in this election, we were able to build over 64 teams across the state of Alabama, across race and faith lines. We were able to train 700 faith leaders and community leaders to mobilize, to educate, and to drive voter turnout for this election to the tune of holding 20,724 conversations about voters' vote day plan around the impact of COVID-19 and voter rights restoration. So it is deeply an honor to receive this award, not because of any great thing that I've done, because of the power of we. Interfaith Mission Service, I am grateful. I know that there's an intersectionality of our work with Faith in Action Alabama. I look forward to opportunities during 2021 to be able to embody what it means to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly before our God in our many faith traditions. The last thing I like to say is that together we rise, together we resist, together we restore, and together we reimagine Madison County as being the beloved community that is rooted in our various faith traditions, but also grounded in revolutionary love. Once again, thank you.
All right. I don't know. Every time I turn around, Stephanie's getting an award of some sort, so or recognized in some way. That speaks to your impact in the community, Stephanie. We're longtime friends, proud of you, and good to see what you and Faith in Action in Alabama are doing. Fantastic work. Now, in my script, and you know, it wouldn't be an awards program if there wasn't some kind of a glitch in the program or scripting. Now, I see somebody mentioned here named Jewel Hairston. Is that person here tonight? They're not here. Oh, okay, they've been cut. Okay. All right, very good. Well, that just means we can end early. That's what that means. And so I'm going to bring back up Tim Tyson. Tim is going to offer us our benediction. Tim, in addition to his work with IMS, is a longtime leader of the Baha'i community here in North Alabama. And Tim, come on up.
Thank you again, David. And it's really been an honor and a pleasure working with you on this program, as well as the rest of, course, the IMS committee that put this together. And we are really, really thankful for the support of Trinity United Methodist Church and for Blue Wood Production for all the technical assistance they gave us and really saved us as well as what Trinity did. On behalf of the Interfaith Mission Service, we're really thankful that you all were able to join us. And the benediction I'm going to present now is a prayer from the Baha'i faith that's been in use by the Baha'is in this country for more than 100 years, actually. It speaks to the timeliness of the day. It speaks to our belief in the future, and it speaks volumes about how we feel the work of the Interfaith Mission Service is necessary to help the community move along and advance spiritually. O thou kind Lord, this gathering is turning to thee. Their hearts are radiant with thy love. These minds and spirits are exhilarated in the message of thy glad tidings. O God, let this American democracy become glorious in spiritual degrees, even as it has aspired to material degrees, and render this just government victorious. confirm this revered nation to upraise the standard of the oneness of humanity, to promulgate the most great peace, to become thereby most glorious and praiseworthy among all the nations of the world. O God, this American nation is worthy of thy favors and is deserving of thy mercy. Make it precious and near to thee through thy bounty and bestowal. Amen. Thank you for joining us this evening. Have a pleasant evening. Good night, everybody.